Good evening, everybody. This is a meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. It's a meeting of the Council held in public. It's not a public meeting. There's no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave by the exit nearest the large screen at the front of the room and proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. We are recording this meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the Council's website following the meeting. All mobile devices should be switched off or sent to silent so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. I won't read the piece out about the public seating areas. I know who's there. Can I, before I start, on apologies for absence, just thank Councillor Barnes for stepping in for me at the last meeting. Unfortunately, I was taken into hospital, and if I get a bit disorientated tonight in my speech, it's because I've had 2 strokes in the last 4 weeks. So I've got a little bit of a tongue-tied every now and again. But I wanted to be here tonight to take part in this meeting. Okay, apologies for absence. It looks like everyone's here. Good. Declarations of interest? Anybody? No. Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Abstentions? That's 2. Okay, thank you. Item 4, the Ombudsman's annual reports. Now, there's a lot of information there, and it does refer, though, of course, to the year ending the 31st of March 2024. The leader of the council, he is reporting this report. There's a lot of detail in the letters involved, but the Ombudsman's letter to the Chief Exec is, I think, enclosure number 7, and the housing part has already been dealt with by the Performance Scrutiny Committee. I call now Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it's great to see you back in the chair, and wishing you all the best with your recovery. As you've alluded to already, the Ombudsman report is in front of members with 7 enclosures for members to consider. It covers the complaints that have been investigated by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman and the Housing Ombudsman, and fundamentally the complaints relate to planning and development, housing, our environmental services, and some of our corporate governance areas. In total, 41 complaints in the 23-24 year were recorded. 6 were upheld after investigation. The majority of those were in housing, and as you said, the Performance Scrutiny Committee did look at those. We had 10 in environmental services, 5 in planning. In terms of the common issues and the case summaries, which members will have had a chance to look through, in relation to planning and development, it was mainly around issues to do with consultation, clarity and enforcement. In terms of housing, it was to do with homelessness applications, delayed responses as well. I think members may have been at the briefing last night on homelessness and TA, so you will have seen for yourself and through the presentation that was shared by Kirsty O'Connell today with members, the sheer volume of cases that our homelessness team are dealing with, over 3,800 cases in the last year alone. So that is putting enormous pressure on the service. And then we've also had some issues around the environment, our environmental services around non-collection of waste and stuff. And we know that that is a major problem, that the waste service at the moment needs to be fixed and changed. And we have a plan to do that on the 28th of April coming up. There are some recommendations in there, Chair, for the Council to take forward around strengthening some of our internal processes and the consultation processes that we're going on. But myself and Ms Smith are open to answering any questions that the Commission has. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Can I say first of all that the I'm hoping that the complaints and the references made to them and action to be taken, because it ended in March 2024 and the letter was from about July, I'm assuming a lot of that action has been taken already and we are seeing some improvement, although I think you will always get complaints, we know that. Any member wish to come in? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Only to say I mean, reading the cases were quite worrying, and I hope that obviously, as Councillor Callaghan has said, that we've had time to work on this, and I hope that we are have learned from some of these complaints and these sort of things won't happen again.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I just said. I'll bring Lindsay in because she'll probably tell us how we're doing.
Thank you. So the report's before you because it's a statutory requirement that we bring details of these matters to you where maladministration's found. But I can confirm that these are being looked at seriously. We have recently, at a management team, done a bit of a deep dive into some of the complaints, and there'll be a working group as well that's looking at them in more detail, looking at our processes and our procedures to make sure that we cover these matters off and hopefully don't have recurring themes.
Thank you. I'm assuming that includes the housing ones. I didn't see the recommendation from the Performance Scrutiny Committee, but I assume the housing people are dealing with all those problems there as well.
Yes, so the complaints actually sit when they go to the ombudsman's, the local government ombudsman and the housing ombudsman, they sit under the monitoring officer, so I can confirm that we are looking at them across the board.
Thank you very much. Any other member wish to come in on that one? If not, the report, her recommendation or the matter to be noted is on page 16. Basically, the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Letter and the Housing Ombudsman's Landlord Performance Report dealing complaints against March 2024 be noted. Okay, everyone happy with that? We needn't vote, it's just a noting. Okay, that moves us on to item 5, Community Centre leasing equipment. Leasing arrangements, I'm reading the wrong bit. Pages 71 to 76. Garrett, who's taking that?
Once I'm no longer the Assistant Director.
Right. Okay. Cabinet Member Jack Ferguson's taking this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing forward this agenda item tonight. I know it's something that you've asked for specifically being brought forward to Overview and Scrutiny Committee. What I'll be able to do tonight is be able to set the scene for the process that's in place for the leasing arrangements for the community centres across the borough. There are some specifics that I won't be able to in relation to particular community centres, in particular individuals and organisations, because of the current process that we're on at the moment, which I'll explain during the presentation. Just to set the scene, members will be aware that we have 31 community centres operating in place across the borough. Of those, 7 are directly managed by the council, and 24 of those are leased to community groups and organisations across the borough. The rationale for leasing community centres is to be able to deliver services predominantly led by the voluntary and community sector, in particular places where particular activities are required, and we have a variety of different leases that are in place. I came into post in May 2024, and one of the things that I was briefed on was the variety of community centre leases that we have, that vary in lengths, vary in rates, and one of the initial findings and one of the initial piece of work that I did in consultation with officers, and I'd like to thank them for, and particularly Mr. Shimon, for all his work over many years in managing the relationships that we have with our community centre operators across the borough. But one of the first things that I was quite keen to do is look at how we can standardise the process from a lease length perspective, but also from start to finish in terms of when leases become available, the process that organisations undertake to be able to lease centres that become vacant. we have, as I mentioned, a number of different leases that vary in different lengths and vary in different rates. So taking the opportunity when a particular lease came in place in Parkside in Pitsea, took the opportunity to pilot a new process which I hope members will endorse tonight, that will become an addendum to the policy that's in place and become the process that we follow going forward. And members, particularly those of us that have previously represented and currently represent Pitsea North West across the council, will be aware of Parkside Community Centre as a community centre that we've received many pieces of casework about over many years. That there was an option to be able to use that as a community centre, giving it back to local community for the benefit of local residents. What we were able to do during the pilot phase was be able to go to market, let residents know of the open opportunity to be able to come forward for use of the building. And we piloted that, and we put it out to market for 4 weeks, where we received a number of expressions of interest from organisations. I think Mr. Shimon took 12 different organisations, or had expressions of interest from 12 organisations in taking on the community centre, of which transpired into 4 detailed expressions of interest. The expressions of interest that we requested were full business plans for each of the organisations wishing to operate the community centre. What's really, really important, and one of members will probably get this from me now by now, is that sustainability of activities and organisations is something that I care passionately about, and want to make sure that we are putting organisations in place and setting organisations up to succeed in the buildings that we lease out. So we required a full business plan being put in place for each of the organisations wishing to take on Parkside Community Centre. That then led to 4 detailed proposals coming forward, of which 3 were then eligible. I then reviewed all of the cases that the business plans that came forward. I then met with the Pitsea North West councillors and the area committee chair to be able to go through the proposals that were received to seek member input. I think, and one of the things that we've been very, very keen on over the last 6 months is strengthening the role of members across the authority, using local members in particular wards and local insight to be able to inform the decisions that are being made. We then, from that, had some follow-up questions that went back out to the organisations that tendered for the proposal. So it wasn't just receiving the initial business plan, we were then going further than the business plans to be able to really make sure and really understand the detail of the proposals that were coming forward. And we received 2 further with the shortlist of 2. And then I, as Cabinet Member, made my final recommendation to officers to proceed with, which is the position that we're in at the moment with heads of terms of negotiations. I think that was a particularly successful pilot, and I think that what that enabled us to do is be able to develop a process and a framework that we can go forward with, that ensures transparency at every stage of the process, that strengthens the role of members, uses local insight into the decisions that we're being able to take place, and long-term sustainable futures for our community centres. At the same time, we are also standardising the lease lengths that we have in place. One of the, and I know you've previously expressed these concerns around the variety of leases that we've had in place. So we are standardising the length of leases to 2 terms initially. So a term of 7 years for new organisations and a term of 25 years for existing organisations and operators. And that will be a standard way for us to be able to work going forward. So I formally recommend the report and move the report, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Can I just ask a couple of questions first of all? You've got 7 managed by the council. That means there's 24 others. Now, just from experience, you'll recall that when we had the committee system, and I was chairman of the Neighbourhood and Public Spaces Committee, we started looking at leases, etc., etc. And the problem is, I think, that some have been operating on leases for so long, people change in the community associations, and then you say, is it a self-repairing lease? Well, no one really knows, because when did they last ever look at the lease? And I think that for tonight, it's my fault because I should have had a briefing. I would have liked to have seen the list of the community centres with the lease lengths to see how many we've got, where they are, what's coming up, how many have got a 30. Someone's got a 30-year lease. I'd love to know how many years left on that one. So can I ask that the members of the Commission be provided with a list of 7 run by the Council and a list of the other 24 and how long the leases are, when they started, so we know there's a possible termination date. I think that will help in terms of accepting your proposed policy for managing community centres when they become vacant. You're going to tell me now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm more than happy to ask that information is circulated. Mr. Chairman has that documentation. More than happy to circulate that and share that.
Bringing Councillor Baggott first as a member of the Commission, and then Councillor Smith, then Councillor Reid, Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand what you're saying, and this is really just to add more grist to that, really. The concern I have when you say about standardising a lease, and I get the reason why we might want to standardise, is that you get lots of different community groups, all walks of life, as the Chairman has said, you know, you get different people, they come, they go. But more importantly, you can have an organisation, for instance. There might be a new organisation as far as leasing to the council, but they could be established in their own way. Now, we all know that with lottery funding and things like that, one of the key criteria for getting lottery funding is having a lease which is beyond 7 years. So by standardising it, are we not in danger of actually putting organisations which are established that suddenly decide they want to actually take out a lease with the council in a bad position because the computer says, well, you're new and therefore you have to have a 7-year lease? What I'm saying is that it would be useful, I think, for the Commission not only to know and understand what the leases are, but to have input as to how this standardisation might actually work in practice. And that might just be a quick working group or a task and finish group, I don't know, but there needs to be a little bit more work and input, I think, from members if we're really going to involve all members and get them all involved in this sort of thing to actually help to shape your thinking.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. I think that's a good idea. If we can do that, take that on board. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should have declared this earlier. I'm chairman of the Great Mistley Hall in my ward, but there is something I'd like to add. Now, the hall, William Simper, the previous chairman, kept it going, got nurseries in there, and having a nursery in the daytime generates so much income that we've replaced all of the windows, all of the doors, the heating, refurbished the kitchen, the toilets, all new flooring. It had a lovely parquet flooring in there, but because it's clay granite, there's a slight crack in the flooring. Perfectly safe, and we've put down modern flooring on top of the parquet flooring to preserve it, and also ensure residents who use the hall are safe. But I've said this to Councillor Ferguson in informal cabinet, that when you've got halls that are making a good income and there's money in the bank, I think it's a conversation to be had to speak to them all to see where they can help put something back, because you could have a well-managed community hall, but they might struggle to get a nursery, which, if you run a hall, a nursery can make all the difference. So some sort of communal pot where they all help one another. So I've spoke to Councillor Ferguson about that, but I just wanted to give that experience and feedback, because I think we should be having more conversations, and it is important to have leases. But when these leases are concrete and iron steel, there's a chance some of them could run up big piggy banks, not look after the building properly, and if the lease comes back to it, who knows what money's left in the bank account and what bills there are. So I think some joined up work at looking at all our halls, maybe this is something for your committee to consider in collaboration with Councillor Ferguson, to look at all these halls, their income, their finances, and see how they can all work together to make sure all the halls in the borough are brought to a good standard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Just to come back on that now, or I'll also add a question to that. Do we actually, even though they're leased, do we ever check on the accounts of how they're operating, the ones that are leased?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank Councillor Baggott and Councillor Smith for their questions. We've built into the lease agreements is review periods which enable us to work with each of the community associations and organisations to be able to review those processes, how the halls are running, that enables informed decisions to be made. and happy to kind of update and take Councillor Smith's points on board of how we can move forward around that.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask the protocol, the process of...
Can you speak up a little bit,
Sorry,
please?
the protocol of the process of how we ask for the annual rent. As a Pitsea North West councillor, I was at the meeting that Councillor Ferguson spoke about for the Parkside Centre, and from all the bids there was a vast difference in the amount of annual rents that each individual bidder put in, and I just wondered what the process or the protocol is for how we actually, you know, deal with that, because there doesn't seem to be a figure that's offered that we would like the rent in this sort of...
That's a good point.
Thank you, and I think that's absolutely a fair question, because I think that absolutely comes to the core of why we need this process and policy in place, to be able to standardise that, to be able to have a rate card of what the expectation is on the basis of the community halls that are on offer, that then allows us to go out and with informed positions of what our expectations are going forward. We haven't had that previously, which has actually got us into this position. So actually having this in place enables us to tackle that issue going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Can I ask you one more question? Barn Hall Community Association, is that one of ours? It is. Right. Interesting, because no one knew it was, and I was making inquiries because that hall was actually built by the London Borough of Waltham Forest, I think, in 1974 or 75. And they, on their information, there's no recognition at all that it's anything to do with Basildon Council. Interesting one. Councillor Baggott.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, the other thing is as well, and this is, I suppose, as I say, the sort of thing that would be teased out in a task and finish group or working group. I remember when I was a councillor for Pitsea North West some time ago, and there was a community centre at the time, and I'm struggling to remember where it was, but it was in the Chalfont area, but all of a sudden it had become very moribund. In fact, it wasn't being used at all. And when we and the council officers did some digging, there'd only been 3 trustees. They'd been trustees when it was first set up 20 years prior, and they died. So then trying to actually extract from dead people, you know, how you're going to redo the lease, who you're going to find it, what the succession was a bit of a nightmare. And that's something else we need to have a protocol for, because it's all very well having a lease, but we need to understand what are the processes for the people that actually sign that lease, and what happens if they are replaced, how is that actually managed, how do we actually transition that over from a succession planning point of view.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. That's a very good point, because I think when they were discussing Langdon Community Centre, the 2 of the trustees on that previously were, I think, ex-councillors, one of whom had died, I think, and how often do we check that the trustees on these community associations are still, A, with us, or still know their trustees?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think that's absolutely a really important area that we need to focus on, around how we can work with each of the organisations to support them, how we can make sure that they have the ongoing support that's required, and know the responsibilities of being and continue to kind of carry out the responsibilities of being leaseholders of our community associations. I think what bringing this proposal forward tonight and bringing this addendum to the policy enables us to do is have much stronger controls. Having the area committee framework that we have, with the regular chairs meetings that we have ongoing, and with the support of this commission, I think enables us to really strengthen this piece of work, to work across the whole borough.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Anyone else? Tonight, because we just asked to consider and comment on the Council's proposed policy for managing community centres when they become vacant, I think we've made various comments, which I think you, Cabinet member, has noted, but I think the information we need which we've requested, I think is very important, and hopefully if we can get that, we may have to come back on this one on the Commission later in the year. Councillor Baggott.
Can I just propose an amendment, Chairman? It's just to back you up and support you, as well as the recommendation there, and for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to set up a working group to help to inform the Cabinet member in this process, or something like that effect. Basically, to get what you said was a good idea, a working group that can actually understand it more and feed into the Cabinet member.
Thank you. I think a working group would be a good idea rather than a task and finish group. But I think there should be at least 2 members of the Commission on it, and I think we should be looking at who else on scrutiny, because I think it comes across policy scrutiny as well, and community engagement scrutiny. So I think that's a worthwhile amendment, and I will support that as well. Anybody else wish to discuss it or say it's an awful idea? Okay, on that then, we're in effect, at this point in time, we're noting the proposed policy for managing community centres when they become vacant, and set up a working group to look at the whole picture of community associations, the differences in them, and I think you've got an indication tonight from the sort of things that working group will be looking for. I'd like to make a suggestion that the chairmanship of that working group should be a member of this commission. I don't particularly want to do it, but Councillor Baggott will do it. I don't disagree with that. Anybody else? No, it's going to report back to the Commission anyway, so.
We can always get membership consultation with you if you want.
Sorry?
We can agree the membership in consultation with you if you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll agree the membership and consultate with myself. Let's see who else comes up first of all from the other policy, other scrutiny groups. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, good. Councillor Barnes, okay. Right, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I think it's useful so far. We'll see where the working group goes. We don't want to kick it in the long grass though. We can also say there are other community associations who run their own places, nothing to do with the council, and I think we should be perhaps supporting those at times. I'm thinking of Shotgate Community Association is its own building. I think there's 1 or 2 others as well. They've got their own buildings and that, and they rely upon income totally from themselves and any grants. They've got no lease with anybody other than perhaps the people whose land they're on. But do we converse with those at all, or are they sort of out on their own?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Conversations and support are always taking place, so I think the process for that needs to be formalised. Just coming back to the recommendations, and as a cabinet member, happy to support and absolutely work with the working group. My only addition, just to support your comments there around the time period, is to report back by May 2025. Yeah.
We did send item 6, Sempra briefing, business plan performance. We did send out yesterday to all members of the Commission a 21-page slideshow, quite detailed, but I understand tonight there's a smaller, briefer version which Melanie is going to show us. And if we let it go through first of all, because I'm sure we did say originally when we asked for Sempra to come that we would have questions and work out what we want to say. So at the end of it, all the questions will come out. But I'd also like that the 21-page one, which I thought was very detailed, perhaps Other than the Commission, I think that information should be made available to all members of the Council. Melanie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I'll provide an update on the performance of Sempra's business plan. So this first slide describes Sempra's company structure, which I think most members will be aware of. So Basildon Borough Council is at the top of the tree as the sole shareholder of Sempra. Basildon Borough Enterprises is the holding company which both Acorn House Developments and Sempra Homes reports into. Then the box beneath with the orange squares, that shows Sempra's board, which is made up of the chairman, which is the strategic director of the Council for Resources and Governance. Then we have two council directors, which is the assistant director for housing and the strategic director for growth and partnerships. We also have a member director, who is Councillor Christopher Hilliard, and we've recently appointed a non-executive director, who is an external director, Robert Wilkinson, and he's also the regional MD of Vistry. And what he does is he brings in an external information and technical prowess to the board to support with that commercial acumen. We also have a shareholder representative that attends the board. That can be a representative from legal or from asset management. In terms of the governance, the Council is the sole shareholder. Sempra is a private limited company and registered at Companies House. As I said, we have a board of directors that meet regularly to provide approval and sets the company's strategic objectives. In terms of the objectives, Sempra, as the subsidiary company of the Council, the objectives complement those of the corporate plan priorities. The business plan is reviewed on an annual basis and approved by the board to ensure it aligns with shareholders' requirements, and it is then presented to Cabinet for approval. So the business plan sets out the direction of financial strategy for the company. It is forecasted over a 5-year period based on schemes that are in the programme, and pipeline sites that we're working on are not included within the financial forecast, but they're noted for the shareholder and for the board to note. In terms of the individual sites, they all have their own individual financial appraisals, and they are assessed for their over a 30-year period to ensure financial viability. The business plan assumptions and financial hurdles are reviewed at least yearly for review to make sure that they align with the market and economic market. And the business plan is also refreshed annually, again approved by the board, and then brought to the Council to approve as the sole shareholder. Sempra has the investment partner status with Homes England, which allows us to then secure a grant for delivery for the use of share ownership housing and other types of affordable tenure. In terms of the objectives, these are set out here. So there's 6 key objectives. One is to contribute to the provision of a diverse housing offer in the borough that supports residents, veterans and key workers with a range of various housing options to meet their needs, and also to provide opportunities to access home ownership. We also focus on quality, providing good quality homes that meet nationally described space standards, so to meet or exceed those, and also that they are secured by design, and we will always aim to reach gold standard, and that those homes are sustainable and built with a fabric first approach to achieve low cost energy through design. We also support the shareholder through the development of underutilised brownfield sites and wider strategic sites. We'll work closely with the market to drive value into the programme to get best value and utilise innovative approaches to work with partners and construction providers. As a subsidiary, we will encourage economic activity through the use of local businesses and supply chains, and provide borough residents with training and learning opportunities. And later in the slides you'll see where we've delivered that. And a target to stretch us is that we will grow the portfolio by a minimum of 10% year on year. And then underpinning all of those objectives is that all of the development opportunities that come forward must be financially viable in line with our financial hurdles. So this next slide provides some information around the key performance against the business plan. So to date, we've delivered 139 homes across 13 sites. Through our investment partnership with Homes England, we've been able to secure 16.6 million of central government grant. As of the 31st of March 24, the accounts show that Sempre Homes has a total value of assets of 58.6 million. To date, 119 borough residents and key workers have been provided with housing. In terms of our programme, 90% of that has been affordable housing delivered to date. And we're currently on site across 7 different sites in the borough, delivering 244 homes. And in terms of our pipeline, we have a pre-planning 65 homes. For our for sale portfolio, we have reached the value of 12.9 million in sold value. And this next slide just shows some of the completed developments, which I'm sure you'll recognise across the borough. Our largest scheme to date has been at Monarch Place in Billericay, where we delivered 30 apartments for shared ownership, and we worked in partnership with Homes England to utilise grant to deliver those homes. This next slide gives a flavour of macroeconomic pressures that we have to encounter when delivering our programme. One of the key ones at the moment is around labour shortages and increased material costs, which places a greater cost on our construction. Also, the impact of the new building regulations and building safety, where we're working to reduce carbon emissions through the provision of air source heat pumps, UPV panels, electric vehicle charging. It's all good stuff, and we adhere to that, but it does come at a cost. In addition to that, there's limited house price growth compared with cost inflation and rising cost of PWLB borrowing and additional measures that are restrictive. So in terms of our approach to viability and in response to these micro pressures, the delivery of affordable housing can be challenging. In response to this, Sempre acting commercially and as part of the planning applications that we've brought to the Council Planning Committee, for example at Chapelgate, Broadmain and Tyfields, we were able to secure a 0% affordable housing obligation as part of that planning approval. However, as Sempre, as it retains as part of its objectives a strong commitment towards the delivery of affordable housing, we then work with Homes England under our investment partner status to deliver in excess of policy compliant affordable housing through the use of Homes England grant. This position is that where any homes that are included within a Section 106 provision, you're not able to secure grant on those housings. That's why we're able to come forward and then get grant and secure grant for those properties so that we can then in turn deliver additional affordable. So that this slide sets out where we've been successful in achieving housing grant from Homes England, and on the left side that's where we've achieved funding for strategic infrastructure to the value of 5.16 million, in particular Car Park 14, which has been quite a challenging site. We were pleased to be able to secure 1.4 million in BLRF funding for infrastructure works, and more recently 2.5 million in bill funding from government, which has been able to unlock that site for delivery. And then on the right hand side, we've achieved 11.5 million, 11.49 million to deliver affordable housing across the borough, which equates to 249 homes. This next slide shows the programme of where we're on site across 7 different sites at the moment, delivering 244 homes. So on Gilgrove, we're on site now with those homes just being released to the market, of which there's 10 shared ownership, which when we launched, they were all purchased on that launch day by borough residents that are seeking to get their first step on the ladder, so I was really pleased about that. We're on site at Broadmain, just down the road, and after discussions with Councillor Smith, we made approaches to the street scene team, and we've had approval to name that scheme as Shepherd Mews. We're on site at Markham's Chase, and those units are going to be released quite soon. So you can see across there, there's the 244 homes being delivered. In terms of social value, we have a strong emphasis on this. We work closely with our contractors to support the local economy. We work with the local schools as well, providing site visits to children that are in construction-related training. We've had visits from Billericay School, and we're planning further visits with Woodland School and Chowden School. All of our homes, the Basildon residents are prioritised to take a Basildon first approach. And then the graph at the bottom shows that today, in total across the street, all of our schemes, we've delivered 1.6 million in local supply chain value. In terms of sales and aftercare, we deal with that ourselves. We have a portfolio of retained stock, and we utilise the services of the council to assist with repairs and maintenance. Gas and compliance and fire risk assessments of the rented stock are all at 100%. Where we let our homes at affordable rent at 80%, what Sempra does, it caps it to the local housing allowance so that it's more of an affordable product. Whilst Sempra is not a registered provider, we're not regulated by the Housing Ombudsman, but we will follow best practice in the sector, in particular in light of the Renters Reform Bill, Dame Hackett's review around fire safety, and any recommendations that come from the Housing Ombudsman. And this next slide just talks about some of the award success that we had this last year, where we achieved the coveted National Inside Housing Awards, winners of the Best Development Team, and Essex Housing Awards. We were the winners of meeting housing needs through our new build and acquisition programme. And then for me, I was really proud to achieve Essex Housing and Development Professional of the Year award. And then this final slide shows, as part of the Basildon Christmas gift drive, we worked with our construction contractors and subcontractors and supply chains, and were able to secure 3,500 in gift voucher donations for children and families spending Christmas in temporary accommodation, and alongside that some food and goodie bag donations for local food banks. And that's kind of a bit of a whistle-top tour of that, but if anyone's got any questions, happy to take those.
Okay. Thank you, Melanie. A couple of questions from myself, first of all. How much is Sempra spending on staff? You know.
So in terms of the staffing, the retained staffing, I don't know the precise figures, but in terms of the head count, it's myself and there are 3 full-time equivalents that work with me. So it's 4 full-time equivalents that are employed.
Okay.
And then we utilise agencies dependent on the requirements of the programme.
And as a company, are you generating any dividends that come back to the council for the budget?
So I think Owen will talk about that.
So the way the council benefits the activity of Sempra is in 2 different ways. So the council borrows the money that supports Sempra, and we lend it to Sempra at a premium. So we make a surplus on the borrowing cost we lend to Sempra, and in the budget, it's £400,000 a year surplus that we meet, and peaks and troughs are managed through the reserves. That's the main way we do it. We haven't had dividends paid to us, but you'll look at the accounts for Sempra, and I think the company is about £4 million worth of equity in the company, which is the value that Sempra has derived during the time it's been in operation.
Thank you for that. One further one. When we had a committee system, we had a regeneration committee. I was the vice chairman of it, and we sold the rest of the market site in Wickford for £943,000 to Sempra. How did it end up going back to Basildon Council when we sold it to Sempra? recall, we sold it to Sempra because a certain guy who wanted Wetherspoons on there, they couldn't match what we were offering to pay.
I think, can I come back to you? I think the Sempra owns Whitford Police Station. We don't own any other sites other than the Whitford Police Station.
No. It was the rest of the market site, which is now used as a Whitford market, and the car park there. And in fact, the regeneration people here actually produced a scheme for that site with Sempra, which included units above with a community space on the ground floor and moving the public toilets into there as well to open up that corner. I saw a copy of it from the then regeneration person, the lady. I won't mention her name here. And it was sold to Sempra, and then I find out then that when Whitford Town Council wanted it for the market site, I said, but Sempra own this. No, they don't. Basildon Council own it. So somebody must have transferred it back to Basildon Council, despite a decision made to... But if you can't answer me tonight, I'd like the answer in writing, please. Baggett.
Yeah, can you just confirm, Chairman, what is being asked of scrutiny tonight for this item? Is it just a question and answer? Is it a briefing? What is the recommendation on the agenda for this item, please? Because I haven't got an agenda.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to press that. We did ask to see Sempra so that we could ask questions about how they were working, what they were doing, and the results, etc. And we did say at the time we would forward any questions in advance, but we didn't do that. I think that looking at it now, it's a question we've been told what Sempra do, what they're working on, etc., etc. Now, I think this is the only place where we can actually scrutinise Sempra. So in doing that, it's up to members who've got questions. I've asked some. They might be difficult to answer, some of them, but go ahead. Councillor Baggett.
Thank you. Knowing that, just to give me a framework, that's all. I'm not too sure this is a question or not. I've known Mrs. Keys for many years. I know how passionate she is about housing, and I know a number of the people behind Sempra are really, really passionate about the work they do. The Sempra was set up effectively to do those sort of developments that ordinary developers wouldn't be able to do on sites that were tricksy. And as an arm's length organisation, it should have the wherewithal and freedom to do that. But the problem we have, and this is the elephant in the room really, Basildon Council, like it or not, is a local authority, and it's run by the administration at the time as voted for by the electors. Now, whether you like the administration, whether you agree with it or not, that's democracy, that's the way the authority works. And Sempra has 80% of its shareholders, or its directors, should I say, are employees of Basildon Council. And what that does is it creates a frisson, because there are times, and I have been involved with conversations over those times in the last decade, where Sempra have made a decision which is the right business decision for a development, and politically it's been knocked back. They've gone through a whole process costing money, which then for political purposes has been derailed. Now, when you derail a project, whether you like it or not, whether you like the project or not, that doesn't serve the residents, it doesn't help Sempra, and ultimately it doesn't help the council. So I suppose my question, if it's a question, is the current makeup of the board appropriate in this current time, or should the board actually be people that are all more independent and therefore less politically bound to the council? Because right now, I know that you have these Chinese walls, you know you've got the professionalism of officers, but at the end of the day, people are only human, and if they are doing one job where they've got a political mandate and another job which is in conflict with that, that doesn't seem fair or even sort of beneficial to the organisation as a whole.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Who wants to answer that one? Mr. Sparks.
So obviously, Sempra is a wholly owned subsidiary, so it works within certain parameters. The board makeup obviously has an impact, but at the end of the day, the council is the holder of all the interest in Sempra, and it can dictate what Sempra does, regardless of who is on the board. So it can dictate to internal and external people because it is the ultimate shareholder of the company.
You wish to come back, Councillor Baggott?
There's a great answer, but I haven't really answered it. The question is, would Sempra be a more efficient organisation if the current board was made up of people that are less wedded to the council?
Mr. Sparks.
I don't think so. I think we had a review 2 or 3 years ago of Sempra. I think it's about, at the time, the additional costs for sort of moving that one step across outweighed potential benefits from that commercialisation. And again, there's a whole wide issues there about risk appetite, obviously for developing, as the council is that wholly owns the company and has that risk at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Any other questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As everybody knows, I'm such a great fan of Scrutiny, and I'm here tonight as a Cabinet Member for Housing and Property. I first wish to declare something. I've not seen this brief. It has not been sent to me, which we've seen tonight. The item on the end was about the Christmas parcels. A relation owns a company that sort of supported it, but Councillor Brown can testify for my late mother. Long-standing family feud, yeah. So we may see each other at funerals, if that, short and sweet. So it has been declared with officers, and I don't speak against that company or for that company. But if Mother was here, you'd need a big swear team. So I think that answers that, and the relation she fell out with. So that's fair. I think actually we need a working group at your discretion, Mr. Chairman, to re-evaluate the establishment and the relationship between Sempra and the council. Now, as you all know, I chaired the Housing and Communities Committee, so I would see Sempra very, very regular. Then a non-executive director was appointed right at the end of my tenure, and that carried on with Councillor Jeff Henry, and now I've got Councillor Hilliard there. And the idea was that it shouldn't be the chairman of the Housing and Communities Committee. There could be some sort of political conflict of interest. But during my tenure this year, so far, as chairman of Cabinet Member for Housing and Property, I have only had Sempra at my briefing twice. And I don't say that to criticise. If there are things I want relayed to Sempra, I had to be able to do that at my monthly briefings. But I think the working group needs to look at that to make sure there's a better relationship. I shouldn't have to speak through the medium of Jonathan Tizard or Kirsty O'Connor to express my views, and it's not a criticism. But I think this Overview and Scrutiny Commission should look at that relationship. Not only that, when this was formed quite cleverly by Councillor Turner, you will remember there was that restriction that councils couldn't borrow money to build council housing stock. So Sempra was a very clever way of increasing council housing stock commercially by building some private, some affordable that you could sell off part rent, part buy, and the small profit would build you some social housing. Now, the only positive thing I can say about Theresa May's premiership, she undone that rule. So if you're not worried about your debt cap and you can find a way around your debt cap, you can borrow, and build all the council houses you like. But that's a government thing we'd need permission for. So the point I am coming to with that preamble is that out of date, that model. So by bringing it in-house, would we be better off? I don't know. And maybe Owen Sparks in due course can answer the question that any profits that Sempra make, are they open to capital gains tax? Where if it was done in-house, we may avoid that. I do not. That's something that should be looked at. So, as I say, it's not here to criticise, but the whole purpose of scrutiny, even when you think you're doing something right, even when you feel you're doing something right, it doesn't hurt to have your homework checked and marked, because we have a housing crisis. if we don't deal with temporary accommodation, it's going to bankrupt this council, and it faces all other councils. And those who attended last night's temporary accommodation briefing will know that it's just like being on the Titanic if we do nothing. The iceberg's it, and we will go down pretty fast if we do nothing to deal with temporary accommodation. But fortunately, we're doing things, we're getting ahead of that curve. But I think now's the time to just review what SEMPRA is there for and make sure it's fit for purpose. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm not saying that, but we shouldn't be marking our own homework. It should be this committee going through with a working group, speaking to all the players, looking at the finances and seeing, is this relevant? Because the whole purpose of this was to get around that restriction which stopped councils borrowing money to build council housing and working in a commercial way to increase our social housing stock. Very clever at the time, very clever of Councillor Turner, but is this the right model moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm not sure about a working group, but I take the point you're making is, in today's circumstances, you're almost saying is SEMPRA fit for purpose?
Asking a question.
You've asked a question. Now, that's difficult. You talked about relationships. At this point in time, after tonight, it's not clear what the relationship is between the council and SEMPRA. At the moment, you as the Cabinet Member for Housing, you are the only link at the moment before this came to scrutiny, because it wouldn't have gone anywhere else. In a moment, so should we not first of all have something from the officers, etc., saying exactly what the relationship is at this point in time, and then you might need to see, does it need changing? I'm going to bring Mr Sparks in first, then Councillor Baggett.
Thank you. I think there are a couple of things. I think obviously we can make sure that Councillor Smith is fully involved as he wants to be or needs to be. I think that's easy for us just to manage. We can take it offline and have a conversation how that works through John and through Christine. Obviously the main link with members also with SEMPRA is business plan that comes forward. So the business plan came forward last December, and there'll be an updated review which is due to come to Cabinet in June. So that would perhaps be a good time to have a look at that review and look at some of those areas that obviously you've raised. But that business plan is the main oversight that the wider members get as well. Say, this is what SEMPRA's doing, this is what the pipeline looks like, this is what the forecasts are, and that is that annual business plan that comes to Cabinet.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm supporting somebody's view here, I'm just not too sure whose. I think probably if a piece of work was going to be done, the question should be, what is the administration's aim for SEMPRA with regards to the building of or developing of sites? And one would hope that that is, as it was originally set up, to develop those sites that are too tricky to do for your developers because they're non-viable in commercial circumstances. And if that's the case, the next question is SEMPRA still fit for purpose, considering what other options there might be out there? Are other councils doing anything? What are they doing? What is the makeup of theirs? How are other councils attacking this problem? Is it in-house? Is it separate? Is it a completely divorced entity? What is out there that we're not aware of? Because then that will feed into the relationship. Because if it came out that there was a better way of doing things, then when you set up the new way of doing things, that then creates the new relationship. So I think by investigating the relationship now, we're putting the cart before the horse to an extent. But I do think there should be a piece of work to make sure that SEMPRA as an organisation is fit for purpose, as Councillor Smith has eloquently said. It was some time ago. Times change, markets change, you know, the workplace changes. We've seen huge amounts of things with logistics and everything else, and the Ukraine, etc., etc., etc. So what is the best model now to achieve the aims that SEMPRA was set up for?
Thank you, Councillor Baggett. At the moment, there's no recommendation on the agenda because it was just a briefing. If you wish to move something, I'm sure
To
you...
support Councillor Smith.
Hang on a sec.
I've got enough for
Hang on a
what's
sec.
like
I'm going to ask another question first of all. At the moment, like the development in Billericay the other week, where is it 50% have got to be affordable housing? Could Sempra go in and buy those affordable housing? I'll ask that question first of all.
So, Sempra does get involved in development of affordable housing from sites. It's done that on a number of occasions and it's doing it now. So again, Mel can give some more details of it. Obviously, what we need to be mindful of, there's lots of affordable housing in different sites and Sempra can't go in and buy every bit of affordable housing that is being developed. So again, each case needs to be looked at to make sure that it is commercially viable, that the rental streams stack up and it actually washes it face at least and obviously makes a return for the council and for Sempra the company.
I fully understand that, which takes me to my next point then. Basildon Council has recently decided to buy property, one in Billericay and at Dartford, to cover the temporary accommodation. So what I've just suggested that Sempra could do, Basildon Council could do. In the same way we've bought other property. So I think the point that Councillor Baggott was making about fit for purpose, is there another way of doing the things that Sempra are doing? We need to look at it. Is there a possibility? Is a housing association a better option than Sempra? I don't know. I'm only surmising. Councillor Baggott, you wish to come back?
Yeah, our recommendation is that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, under the Chairman's guidance to do the best method, establish some sort of party in order to evaluate whether Sempra is still fit for purpose given its intended aims and whether there are better ways of achieving those aims.
Was that a working group you mentioned?
Well, I was leaving it open to you so you could make the decision whether it was a working group or task and finish. It's down to your discretion then, isn't it?
Mr. Sparks.
Sorry, again, just for I think timing and for a clarity of what is planned anyway as part of due course. So there will be another report coming to Cabinet June time, which will be a review of the business plan, which seems a good time to sort of to hook that on. We obviously did do a fairly fundamental review of Sempra about 2 years ago, so it might be worth again just sharing that again with the committee to understand what that looked at and building on that rather than repeating some activity we did then. And then finally, just to flag, I'm just conscious that we need to be a bit mindful of how many working groups as a council we can support at any one point in time. Just want to flag that up as an issue that we need to make sure we've got resources to be able to support all these working groups because we have got some resource constraints, so just really to put that in the mix.
Take your point, but I think what Councillor Baggott has moved, I think, is almost immediate rather than waiting for June to, you know, something else to happen. Anybody else? Mr. Councillor, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just want to ask.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I say, this is not to criticise, undermine, but if we get our social housing not right with this temporary accommodation crisis, we're going to be in trouble. It's not a criticism, any bad faults of our staff, they do a good job. But as I say, this was established in a different time when councils could not borrow using the housing revenue account to build social housing. This is not about sweeping up anything under the mat. This is about asking for this to be checked over. And with respect to our 151 officer, about we've got too many working groups. Of all the working groups the council is looking at or has, this would be the most important one. Because the temporary accommodation bill is picked up out of the general funds, the council tax. And when residents say to us councillors, why is the park looking like that? Why aren't they doing this? Would it be nice if that was replaced? But when you're spending what is approaching our 3 million on temporary accommodation, that is what's eating our money up. And it's so important. We are going to go out wholehearted to deal with our temporary accommodation and social housing crisis to the best we can, limited by borrowing restrictions, the law, and obviously the planning process. But we've got to make sure we give our process an MOT. As I say, it's not a criticism, it's an MOT. And if there's tweaks and other things or a different view for the working group to discover and look at, that is only good for the council taxpayer, because we do not want this council to be like Thurrock because we didn't effectively deal with social housing. I know we're in a good place, but nothing swept under the mat. We're going to put our washing in public, and if something's not right, that's what the working group is there to pick up on.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask a question around sort of what set of, it's a difficult way to describe, what set of rules and regulations do you essentially work towards? So we know that construction companies in the private sector versus local authorities, there tends to be a difference between the way that the private sector operates to the way local authorities operate across the things that both those type of organisations do. Whilst everyone has to be compliant with the law, there is a tendency, I think, for private organisations to look for alternatives, or possibly not look for as many sort of rules and regulations. I was struck by what you mentioned about the net zero stuff and how that was potentially driving construction costs up. Which do you conform to? Are you sort of more towards the kind of local authority way of doing things, of sort of dotting every I, crossing every T, or is it more the private sector of trying to get the most bang for your buck, for want of a better expression?
So shall I take it first?
Melanie.
Yes, so SEMPRA as a company is regulated under the Local Government and Housing Act 1989, and as Owen said, it is controlled by Basildon Borough Council, so we're very much in keeping with that. But as a commercial entity, we are also able to work hard with our contractors to drive value into our programmes so we can deliver value for money and delivery of new homes across the borough. That in terms of sites that come forward, we will meet planning and obligations, not only meet and exceed. And we utilise our relationship with Homes England. We have investment partner status so that we can exceed the affordable housing provision. So you would have seen on one of the slides, 90% of our stock that we've delivered has been affordable housing, whereas a private developer wouldn't be doing that. It would be more around the commercial for sale.
Councillor Barnes.
So just on that then, is there scope potentially for, and I appreciate that perhaps SEMPRA's role has changed over the years, clearly from where it first started out, but is there scope then for the council potentially to look at more commercial developments so that it can then fund additional social housing? Because at the moment it sounds to me like we're effectively building sort of 90% of what we do to fund with sort of 10% surplus. Is there a way of redressing that balance so that we potentially could put more funds into the system?
Anybody wish to come back on that? Mr. Sparks.
I think that is part of the balance members need to take, and we've taken as SEMPRA. So obviously SEMPRA is looking to build in quality homes, all national space standard, safer by design. Obviously a commercial company may decide they didn't want to do that, and they could try and obviously reduce costs in that way. SEMPRA as a company isn't subject to the public sector procurement rules, so it can be more agile in its procurement and it can attract that in different ways. But also mindful that it is a wholly owned company of the council, so we need to be very mindful of risk and to make sure that obviously we don't want the company to be exposed to unacceptable risk from the council's perspective, and obviously from a reputational perspective as well, that it is wholly owned by the council, so we need to make sure we deliver, we support obviously social values we try and get out as well. So it is a mixture because we are part of the council and a wholly owned company, but we have got those flexibilities and we do look to drive a profit, but against that quality development we want to deliver.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Councillor Baggott, can you repeat your wording? Probably not. I'm sure you remember.
That a group, the makeup of which is determined by the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, is established in order to look at SEMPRA and establish whether or not it is fit for purpose in its current makeup and what improvements could be contemplated, or words to that effect.
It's been seconded, quite clear. Any further discussion, or shall we put that to the vote? Okay, all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. There's one item left on the agenda, that's the work programme 2024-25.
Yeah.
So we've just added to it.
Sorry?
We've just added to it.
Have you? Oh, we have actually, yes. And I was just about to say the 18th of March looks very, very busy. In fact, we may have to look at that.
Yeah, some might come on.
Has any member got anything else they wish to add to the work programme? Because it won't necessarily be for March, but it will go into the next year's agendas. No? Okay. So are you agree to note the work programme as published on page 78? Thank you. And that's all we've got to do tonight. So thank you very much for your attendance and all your help. Thank you very much indeed.